The topic of this video is using the observation forms when listening to one of our recordings. So we're going to start by going to the back of the observation form. Everyone, when you're turned over to the back of the observation form, what you're looking at is the actual rubric that the adjudicators have when we go to festivals. So this is the same adjudication rubric that the judges are using when we're singing. The point being that we want to know what we're being adjudicated on and what they're listening for, so that we can make the adjustments ahead of time before we go to festival. So when you look over there, you'll see a bunch of terms on the left-hand side of the rubric. On the left-hand side of the rubric, you'll see words like tone quality, intonation, rhythm, balance blend, technique, interpretation, diction, and performance factors. When you're going through all of those different terms, those are your subcategories, and all of them are factored in from all three songs and lead to giving you an overall score. When we're doing our observations in class, most commonly we're only going to pick one or two of those subcategories to give ourselves a score on. Usually I'll pick them on the places where we're most prominently having some issues that we want to start to listen a little more closely to and figure out some things on. So after you've done one of those categories and you've identified all of those different categories, now we're going to go along the different columns. At the top of the columns, you'll see words like superior, excellent, good, fair, and poor. Now those 5 different terms are your scores. So if you've ever heard someone say we've got a 1 at festival or we got a 2 at festival, a 1 is superior, a 2 is excellent, a 3 is good, a 4 is fair, and a 5 is poor. Now what that means is listed under each category. So for example, if you got a superior in tone quality, you can see that means that your tone quality was open, resonant, stylistically appropriate tone in all registers and ranges, and you had round and well-matched vowels. So when they're thinking, okay, what was this group's tone quality like? That's the paragraph that they would use to describe it. So if you're listening to the recording and you're adjudicating the tone quality and you thought it was all of that stuff, you circle that one. Now, when you're going through all of this stuff, that's a lot of words to describe these different scores. So kind of the shorthand that you can rely on when you're going through these different categories is this. So if your tone quality was always a good tone quality with infrequent errors, very infrequent errors, that's going to be superior. So it's always good. Same thing goes for any of the categories. So if your balance blend was always good, it was always balanced, it was always well blended, that's superior. Okay, we'll talk about in a different video what do all of these different categories mean specifically, but that's what a 1 would be. It's always. A 2, or excellent, usually is referring to it was mostly good, but there was some errors that were going on. So when there's these errors that are going on and the adjustments aren't made instantly, that's going to be a 2. So that's the big difference between a 1 and a 2. A 1 is you were always good. If there was an infrequent error, the adjustment's made instantly. If it's a 2, that means there was an error and the adjustment wasn't really made and it happens a few times throughout the piece. That's a 2. And it's really easy to go from the category 1 to the category 2 as a singer if we're not aware of what the errors we're making are. And then there's a 3. A 3, or good, the 3 is when there are frequent errors. So there's an error that's happening and it's reoccurring over and over again. You're making the same error over and over, and it happens throughout the piece. So you're still developing the concept of, for example, intonation. So if you are frequently hitting chords and it's out of tune over and over again, and we never make the adjustment and we're not really hearing that we're out of tune, so we're not fixing it, that's going to be more in the 3 category. Now, 4s and 5s are not typically used at festivals. So fair and poor, we don't see a whole lot of that, because basically what that is like people never sing in tune, or people just are not really prepared or not memorized or just not really bringing music to the festival that works for their group at all. So that's how we use the rubric. Now flip over to the front. Now the front side's a little easier for the most part than what the back side is. The front side, it's real self-explanatory. Question 1, which choir is this observation for? You just circle the name of your choir. Number 2, which recording are you observing? So put the name of the song and then put the date that we recorded it. So you got to think back, okay, what was the day that we did this recording on? And it's usually in the title of the file if you're doing all of this online. the category being used to fill out, that'll be assigned per different one. Usually I'll only have you do 1 or 2 of those topics per observation form that you're trying to fill out. Category rating, that's just the rubric. What we just explained on the back, that's number 4. So you got to flip over, you got to give us a score. Now 5 and 6 are probably a little bit more complicated, but if you just follow these steps, we'll get it done real easy. So number 5 is a justification. So when you're going to festival, your adjudicators can't just circle whatever they want on the back of the rubric. They actually have to justify that by writing comments on the front. Now their front looks different than our front. But in their front, they have sections for comments. And what they have to do is they have to identify measure numbers specifically. Okay, well, after they've identified those measure numbers specifically, they have to give their thoughts on that. And so that's what I'm asking you to do with question number 5 and question number 6. So for question number 5, it's listed as a justification and a positive example, something we did well. So number 5 is something we did well, and this is what you have to write. First, you have to list the measure number. If there's not measure numbers in your music, you have to give me a page number, give me a system number, something like that. Give me middle of the page, something like that. Circle it, and then figure out how are you going to identify that. So I need to know where you're talking about. That's the first thing, so a measure number. The second thing that we need is what you heard. That's your first sentence that you're going to write. Okay, describe what you heard. And then the second sentence that you're going to write, the third thing that you put in there, that's going to be what did you like about what you heard? What about it made you actually think, okay, yeah, that's a positive example. What did you like about what you heard? So that's number 5. Number 6 is going to be the opposite of that. It's going to be a place for improvement. So we're still going to start out by listing a measure number. Make sure we know where you're talking about specifically. You're going to list what you heard. And then the second sentence, the third thing that you're going to list is going to be, how do you think we could fix it? How do you think we can do better? So that's number 6. To be 100% clear, you need to have your sheet music out whenever you're doing an observation. This is why when you go to festival, you are required to bring original copies of the music for the adjudicator so that they can look through and see what measure number you're at, write down the part that they want to discuss, whether it's a positive example or a negative example, but they're not just saying, oh, there was that one part. They're saying on measure 14 through 16, you did this well. On measure 17 through 18, however, we had some errors that occurred in those spots. That's what we're looking for when you do these observations. If you do not have your sheet music out, you can't just guess where these things are. So when you do your observations on our self-recordings, you need to have your sheet music out. No one should have their sheet music put away. So that's your rubric, and that's your adjudication, that's your observation form that you're gonna fill out for the song that we're listening to, or the recording of ourselves that we're doing. Essentially, that's the breakdown of just the form. Next, what we're going to talk about in the next video is each individual category and how to identify, okay, what really is good tone quality? What really is good intonation?